sitting in an apartment and looking out of the window. We hear that her brother Jared had an accident while swimming, but he survived. Ren then sits at a TDA office, and there she states that her crew creates experiences. Later, she goes to the hospital and puts a device on her brother. After staying with him for a while, she leaves and enters her work facility. She then sits at her desk and engages in an artificial experience. We then see the same device on her head and get to hear that her father is the biggest expert on this technology. Someone tells Ren that her father stated prolonged exposure to it can have serious side effects. She then gets a drop in her eye and has an artificial experience of walking in a forest. As she walks there, she explains that the software builds from fragments of the subconscious and becomes part of you like any other memory. Ren then gets asked if there is a chance that the experience could last longer than it needs to, and Ren answers there is no chance of that. We then see on the monitor that a certain experience lasted for a few seconds. After that, we see Ren's assistant giving her another experience. She appears in a cabin surrounded by snow. Soon, she starts snowboarding. Her experience of being there lasts for hours. Then she finds herself in the starting position, and the monitor shows that she's been there for over 2 days. Ren keeps being brought back to that starting position, and even more days accumulate. The monitor displays a warning and her landscape starts shifting. This causes her assistant to use an emergency siren to bring her back. When she returns, she sees she's been gone for over 6 days. Following that, Ren enters an office where a man talks about the technology of other life. He states how years of experience could be added to the brain like apps to a computer. Soon after, he welcomes Ren as the co-founder of it. She starts talking about it, and we do not see the continuation. After her talk, she tells her associate, Sam, that they need more testers, but he tells her they do not. After a few more words with him, Ren leaves. The lady at the TDA office continues talking by saying that the users of other life could become trapped by its fantasy. Later, Ren looks at her experience in the snow area and sees a problem in the code. After fixing it, she returns there to test it. Then a man brings her some paperwork, saying it's from Sam. He is Danny, and he soon leaves with her assistant. Ren then works alone. She later comes to visit her brother and puts the device on his head. Then she takes it off when someone enters the area. Soon enough, Ren leaves the hospital and goes home. She looks at her phone and sees a message to consent to withdraw life support from a member of her family. The next scene has her sitting in an auditorium. The man there starts talking to her, telling her he thought she would be busy. Then he tells her to come down, and when she does, she tells him they launch Other Life on Monday. She adds that they made progress. But eventually, he tells her that the mind is more than binary switches, which causes an argument. Ren then tells him that he can't unplug her brother without her consent. But he tells her that he can, and he's not asking for her permission, just her support. After that, he leaves. Later, Ren arrives at her workplace. Sam shows her a model on the computer and asks if it's costing them. She tells him that it's not, and they argue about it. Then he starts talking about Other Life being used as a virtual prison. But Ren disagrees with that, stating it was about opening minds to other possibilities. Yet Sam says that all they need is a proof of concept. Ren continues to disagree with it, and Sam angrily yells at her, causing her to leave. Outside, she meets Danny. They soon engage in intimacy. What comes after is her giving him the snowboarding experience. He comes out telling her he did not expect it to be so real. Then he tries another experience and suffers from a seizure. Ren comes to him and says it's just a glitch. Then she starts panicking and calls an ambulance. Subsequently, she and Sam sit in a private room with a lawyer. The lawyer tells her that no one understands what they do. That is the problem with giving her a proper defense. Then alone, Sam asks her what happened. She tells him she doesn't know, and he asks what is in the plastic bag. Then he tells her that she's been spending thousands of hours in her own world, and they are finished. Afterward, he says he hopes that whatever she is working on is worth something. Then the lawyer brings in 2 other law officials for Ren to meet. The lawyer then gives Ren an offer of deferred prosecution. It states if she complies with the terms, then certain charges will not be pressed. All she has to do is agree to be a test subject in a virtual confinement program for 1 year. But Ren does not want to comply. This prompts Sam to come to her and say that 1 year in virtual confinement is 1 minute of her life. He emphasizes that it's a minute to save everything. After still not wanting to do it, Sam tells her that she gave Danny an untested sample and he lost his life. He then says to consider the alternative. She then enters the room where she will have her program. Her associate describes the confinement program to the officials there. Then she tells him how to use the syringe because he never had to. What follows is Ren getting a drop in her eye and entering the virtual reality. In there, one of the first things she sees is the number 001. She then finds some water bottles and other supplies. Exercises follow that, and so does eating. Afterward, she engages in some writing, but when she realizes that no one will read it, she gets angry and slams her device. Then 001 becomes 002. Ren notices all her supplies have become replenished. Then she remembers her time with Danny. After the number changes again, she remembers her time with Jared on the beach. She imagines lying on the shore. Then she writes about various people who have recovered from coma states. Meanwhile, the days go by in multitudes. Then Ren goes through conversations she has had, speaking to no one as if someone were there. When she finally reaches the number and day 365, she stands nervously, waiting to be released. But the room becomes red and nothing else happens. Soon enough, the number reverts to 001. Ren gets angry and curses Byron for messing up the exit routine. She goes to slam at the digital number and starts breaking everything there. Then she looks in the area where her supplies come from. She notices something odd there and rips through some plastic. After ripping through, she exits the confinement and appears in a warehouse. She runs into another area and turns on the lights. The room reveals all the supplies she has been getting in her prison. Then she enters another room with monitors and sees her cell on some of them. When she hears someone's voice, she runs out and gets into a truck. We see that it is Sam running after her, but Ren drives away. Following that, she starts walking in a city. Then she calls the hospital and asks about Jared. When she enters a building, she discovers that it is abandoned, causing her to leave. Then she goes to a clothing store and collects some clothes. After leaving, she sees Sam on the cover of Mine magazine, where he is called a Tim Lord. Then Ren occupies an embassy. The personnel there check her records and tell her she's been in Italy for 1 year. But she corrects them and said she's been in a box. She then tries to explain to them that it's Other Life, her company. The man tells her there are no charges against her on record, and she asks them to look at her cell. When they come there, Ren sees there is nothing there anymore. Then they leave and she goes to her apartment building. The man there informs her that there was a tenant in her flat for almost 1 year. Then from behind the glass, Sam arrives with another individual. He tells her that he knows she is confused, but he could help her figure things out. He tells her to go somewhere safe with him, and she questions why this place isn't safe. She starts running away then, and Sam tries catching her from another area. Eventually, she escapes onto the street and buzzes into the building of her friend. She comes out and meets with her. Her friend then tells her they all assumed she left work. But when Ren starts explaining to her what happened, she stops her when she mentions Danny's deceased status. Later, we see Danny coming to her and they reunite. Then they sit elsewhere and Danny tells her what happened to him. He and her friend Cass tell her about the developments of Other Life. They also inform her how it's being used as a prison for some. But Ren is disappointed to hear that, stating that's not what it is for. After that, Danny tells her to go somewhere safe and that he will help her. Ren also tells them that she doesn't care about the company and that she used her father's patent to start Other Life to bring her brother back. Later, Ren and Danny go to the Other Life building. When they approach Byron's office, the man sees Ren and panics. They grab him and Ren accesses his computer to search for her code, but she can't find it there. So she looks on the shelf. After finding it, she strikes Byron and they leave the area. Then outside, they observe how Cass gets taken into a vehicle by Other Life personnel. The couple gets in their own car and rides out. Following that, they enter a house and Ren calls out to anybody that might be there. Then she enters a room and finds a picture of her with Jared. In another room, technology is abundant. Ren uses the computer there to access her software. On the next day, she apologizes to Danny, which leads to them engaging in romance. Ren hears someone enter the house a while later. They both come down and she sees her father, Robert. She then introduces Danny to him, and Robert tells her that Sam called his office. He follows that by asking her what she stole, and she tells him it was hers to begin with. Then she states that he filed a missing person report, which results in both of them hugging. Her father then asks what they did to her. Later, Ren tells Danny that he took the simulation where her brother drowned. She adds that his subconscious chose a bad path for him that led to a seizure. Afterward, she informs them she created a version of other life that lets one rewrite memories. She says that's what they're refining. Then Robert asks her if she finished it. The answer Ren gives implies she did. Next, she visits the hospital to check on Jared. She puts a drop on his eye, and the underwater simulation activates. He soon opens his eyes, and we see Ren running to him at the beach. Jared looks at her there, and then starts having a seizure in the bed. Ren cries and soon unplugs him from life support. In her memory, she sees him stand and walk to the water. Then she lies near him in bed as his heart rate starts flatlining. After that, someone comes in and says he wonders what Jared saw. It is Sam, and Ren tells him he saw nothing. We then see fragments of memories coming to Ren from the moment she was entering virtual confinement. As the fragments come, she starts walking away. In her memory, she stands at the beach and soon walks into the water as Jared did. We then see her mind undergoing a sort of travel. Consequently, she wakes in the room where she was getting placed in her virtual confinement. Ren then takes the device off and the syringe out. Sam is glad she is back and behaves scared. Ren strikes him and slams the laptop on the floor. This prompts Sam to hold her under control. After all that, Ren sits and remembers her brother, father, Danny, and prison. She then remembers the TDA official asking Ren what her ambition for her technology is, and Ren responds that it's to give people a chance at a life they may never know. We see her get the approved stamp on her project. Then she comes and sits with Sam. He tells her that maybe he pushed too hard on the virtual confinement, and she says she will withdraw and the company is his, while the patent remains hers. She states that Danny really did lose his life. Then as she walks away, Sam asks what happened to her in the virtual prison. Later, we witness Danny's cremation. Ren leaves the building and calls her father. She informs him she was in virtual confinement and tells him they should go to the hospital. After that, Sam calls and tells her she needs to see something in person. So she comes in, and they show her the model of her state of mind while she was in virtual prison. Sam points to a moment in the model and says that here she was scared, but at another moment she liked it. He then asks what was good about being there. After a few seconds without her answering, he realizes that she broke out of there. He becomes excited and says it's a breakthrough that will save their company. Afterward, he wants her to go back in so they could understand the phenomenon more, but Ren does not want to go back. Sam tries to convince her, but she still doesn't want to. Then he tells her to just sit down, and Ren does. What happens next is Sam putting a drop in her eye against her will. She starts entering confinement again, and Sam tells Byron to hook it up, but he tells him he won't. Ren wakes in prison again, and Byron puts the device on her. After yelling out of severe dissatisfaction, Ren sits in confinement and tells herself that she did this before. As the numbers pass for her, their monitor displays a glitch with time. Then it shows a transfer error, and Ren wakes up and brings Sam down. She then uses the drop still on her eye and smears it onto Sam's eye, which brings him into the virtual prison. She and Byron then connect him. Eventually, they get a system crash and Sam starts getting a seizure. But Ren wants to see if he will escape as she did. Soon, the days reset back to 001 for him, and Ren injects him with the syringe. He then wakes in shock, and she leaves without saying a word. Ren then meets with her father, and they later occupy an empty hospital bed. Her father cries there, implying that Jared has been unplugged and removed. The final scene has Ren walking on the pathway at the beach. When she reaches the end, she stands and looks out into the distance.